Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Talking About Birds, the only Cardinal podcast likely to lose its job this spring. My name is Nate Heininger, and I am joined by my co-host, Ben Samorka.
What up, Nate?
Wow. If you have an idea for the opening bit, text or leave us a voicemail at 848-48-BIRDS. Hambone, here we are, end
Yo,
of
what's up? What's
January,
up? What's up, Nate? What's up?
coming in hot. We are mere days from February, which then means we are but weeks from pitchers and catchers reporting. We are almost to the end of the off season. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. It's just, waking up, grinding,
Best
getting
shape of
my
your life.
protein in, just making sure that everything's correct, just getting ready for the season. It's been a really long, hard off season. I've been putting in that work.
Yeah, how are
Um,
you? Let's dig in on this. How are you preparing for the regular season?
Wake up, like I said, hit that protein,
Uh-huh.
obviously jam on emails. I wake up at 4 a.m. every day.
Sure. Of course.
Then I
Rise and
go
grind.
ground in the backyard and center myself. Obviously, let those sun rays hit me, wake me up, get me ready for the day. Hydrate, of course.
Uh-huh.
Then I
Don't
go check
hydrate.
my stock portfolio, make sure everything's straight there. Now it's 6
You never
a.m.
know what could happen overnight to a stock portfolio.
I don't know what character that was, but I was
Yeah.
rising and I was grinding, and I just thought that you
Both.
needed to know.
Yeah, gripping it and ripping it. Well, you
Hell
see,
yeah,
you gotta
brother.
wake up at noon to look this good, so I understand I understand that mentality. All right, we got a few matters of business, Hambone, to get to before we get to our absolutely packed show. Wow.
Oh,
It's it is filling up, my dude. So super excited. Next week, Dan Zimborski, the creator of the Zips projection system and all around cool dude, joined the show last year to talk about an article he wrote about the St. Louis Cardinals. He's coming back to dig into the Zips projections that were released for the Cardinals just a couple days ago. So we're not going to get too far into that article today. I think there's a lot to unpack from that, and we're fortunate to do it with the author of the article himself next week. So keep an eye out
couldn't
for
be
that.
more excited. That was so much fun talking to him last year.
Yeah,
Maybe this is a new yearly tradition. Obviously, we put a lot of weight in his projection systems. I think it's the best projection system out there.
yeah,
And he's like the coolest guy. Yeah, he's
yeah.
his life is baseball and video games. What else can you want?
Well, I know. I think I awkwardly made the joke to him on the show last year that he is just a better version of me. He writes and blogs and podcasts about baseball and video games, but he does it professionally
Yeah.
and for major publications and is a
Well, you didn't
is a
scare
big.
him away, so
That's a good
all good.
point. We're getting there. We're getting there. So yeah, he'll be back next week. Assuming our scheduled stuff works out. So keep an eye out for that next week. Also, we are in the planning stages of a tradition that we have now done in the off season, which is a bad baseball movie night. The way this works is we watch the movie together and chat about it on Discord. So if you're interested in joining that, or if you're a member of the Birdscord already, keep an eye out in the Birdscord if you'd like to join. Patreon.com/talking about birds. We haven't landed on the movie yet, but there's a couple good suggestions already thrown out there, including some movies that I have absolutely never even heard of, which is a good sign for this sort of thing. I think we have exhausted the what's it, UB baseball universe. So we're expanding past dead ball and all of that, although I think I could just watch those movies every day.
Yeah, I
So
mean, maybe another one will come out here at some point. You referenced that baseball cartoon. I mean, there's a lot of Japanese baseball content that could be consuming.
that's true. That's true. So I think there's plenty of opportunity out there. We just need to seize it.
Yeah, I watched the documentary. There's like a 25-minute documentary on the Trey Turner thing that happened last year. on Netflix.
Yeah.
Did you watch that by chance?
I haven't yet. You telling me that it's 25 minutes makes it a lot more appealing to me because that makes a lot more sense because I could not believe that there was a documentary about this.
Well, it's really sad. It's like it's all about the guy who like started the idea, and there's a little bit of Trey Turner in it, but it's all about how the guy was like, well, just really not happy, like severely depressed,
Mm.
for many different reasons. So, um, I don't know.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with what Hambone here is talking about, there's if you remember in the 2024 season, it was 2024, right? Or was it 23?
Yeah, it was last year, right?
Yeah, yeah. Trey Turner not doing great for the Phillies, and then the fan base organized a standing ovation at a game, and it got a lot of momentum. And
Oh, it was 23. It was 23.
okay,
Sorry,
okay,
sorry.
yeah. That's what I thought because that was the first
Yeah,
year with him with the contract. So,
oh, it
uh,
stinks.
they organized just like an impromptu, not
It was
organized
all weekend,
impromptu.
all
It's
weekend.
not it's not a thing. Yeah. All weekend they did standing ovations for Trey just to show him their support and that they're here for him. A very anti Philadelphia Phillies fan base style thing to do. Organizing to show love for somebody. And you can set your arbitrary goalposts anywhere you want, but it certainly seems like after that weekend things came together for Trey, and he was the player that they had intended on signing, and that he had
He
been his whole career.
In the second half, he hit almost 300 with 16 home runs,
Yeah,
and he's not like a traditional power guy. He just totally went off.
right. Yeah, and so they made a documentary about it, which is surprising to me that they could make a documentary about it, but it is only 25 minutes. So
Hey, I'll just take all the bonus baseball content I can get my grubby little fingers on.
for sure, and I do need to check it out. I've just been watching Bash Brothers on repeat on Netflix instead. So
Another
yeah,
perfect film.
also 25 minutes long,
Yeah.
roughly.
The TikTok generation, you can't go longer than that.
Yeah. Well, and I've got one last little bit of business, and then we can get into our Cardinal discussion. So I want to thank all everyone who sent me pictures of them getting accepted into uh banana ball tickets. And I want to say fuck off, leave me alone. Not cool. All right. Happy
Uh,
for you.
I know,
Um
a friend of the show, Jobo, just posted that he got selected.
Yeah, yeah, and everyone's coming out to tell old Nady H they got tickets when he did not. Fortunately, said friend Jobo has hooked me up, and I will be attending.
Oh,
So,
that's horseshit. That is you did not earn this.
so I've acquired some banana ball tickets. So I will be going to Busch Stadium in order to see the Savannah Bananas, possibly, very likely, the most entertaining game I'll watch at Busch Stadium in 2025. But kind of unfair scale because they're on stilts and shit. So
Also, Tommy Pham could come back.
Tommy Pham could come back. That's the
There's
thing
no
that this team
reason
needs.
he won't. Yeah.
Um, all right, let's talk about the Cardinals. Okay, so for this episode,
Pack show
because
in ADH. Pack show.
pack show, there is no single piece of news that has occurred for the St. Louis Cardinals this week.
Something I do want to shout out, if you're not listening to Katie Woo's new podcast and you need more Cardinals information, our buddy, my brother, my dear boy, Kyle Reese was featured on Katie Woo's most recent episode. And I think they did a great job, and it was a fun conversation. And what I thought was really funny about the podcast is that Katie Woo, who could not be more plugged into the Cardinals, there's no one more knowledgeable outside of the Cardinals organization, said there's nothing has happened over the past few weeks. There's not a single thing
Yeah.
newsworthy to talk about.
Yeah, we had the winter warm up last week, and there was a fair bit of conversation that came from that, and some fun player interactions, but there was no news. We
Yeah.
know the Cardinals are currently, actively, maybe trying to trade Arenado, and that's about it. It sure seems, and the closer we get And just the language coming from Mozeliak certainly makes you think we might need to start planning on having Arenado as a St. Louis Cardinal in 2025, which uh, awkward, but he's a professional. I'm sure he'll be fine. But we thought for this episode, we would start to dig into spring training a little bit, talk about some of the battles that are coming up and what we are excited to see. Because we are just a few short weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting, and then we'll have actual data and results and hopefully Cardinal news to discuss as we start to get a look
Yeah.
at what the 2025 roster will look like.
It's wild that we're already at this point in the year. It's crazy to me that the Super Bowl is coming up, which obviously the
The
end of
what?
the Super Bowl is the beginning of the baseball season, which is always exciting.
Ah, the big game.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. Are we gonna get is this episode gonna get taken down
We're
because I
gonna get a
said that?
takedown. Yeah, we're gonna get a takedown.
Superb owl.
Yes. The big game, my boy.
Yeah, I see that everyone's mad about the matchup, which is funny to me. I'm a Missouri guy, so you think that maybe I'd root for the Chiefs. But if I remember correctly, last time the Eagles won, wasn't there a guy that was eating like horse manure in the middle of the streets while they were celebrating?
That may or may not have been related to the celebration of the Philadelphia Eagles.
And I think there was a story about them, like the city was greasing the poles, like the streetlight poles and stuff like that. So for pure chaos, I'm all birds. Let's go
Yeah,
Eagles.
we're a
I
bird
want,
team, so go
yeah,
Eagles. Also, fuck the Chiefs. They were one of the biggest proponents, unsurprisingly. If you wish that the Rams were still in St. Louis, if you were a Rams fan and now find yourself a Chiefs fan, well, you've fallen for their game, my friend. The Chiefs are one of the primary reasons that the NFL supported the Rams moving. And you
yep,
totally understand why, right? But I have no love in my well, I don't like any of them. I don't like the NFL, so I don't want it. I remember when there was that blackout during the Super Bowl.
yes,
That
yes,
was the single greatest moment in NFL
yeah,
history, in my opinion, when it all shut down and almost had to stop.
yeah. Your hatred towards the NFL is still sharp
Yes.
as ever, and I've kind of just I've become apathetic. I watch one game a year.
Uh-huh.
It's the big game.
Ooh.
Um, don't come
Yeah, I
after
know. I
me.
don't need to soapbox. I
Yeah.
get all fired up in the bone. And
I don't I think my life is a little better not being an NFL fan. I think I
I
see all this consternation and
yeah.
hand wringing about like how the matchup even got to it, the place that it's gotten to, and I'm like, I'm happy to just not care about this anymore. It's kind of a weight off.
I actually said the exact same thing when I was ranting about the NFL to someone else the other day. Because though I have not simply watched a football game in years, I still love to express my hatred for the organization. And outside of that, like the actual reasons behind it, I feel significantly happier now than I did when I was a diehard NFL fan for a while.
I mean,
I
you
want
and I were I think we were serious Rams fans for sure.
Yeah. I went to Sam Bradford's, first game as a Ram, which was the preseason game, you know?
Yeah.
I watched every single game of the 1-15 season, the 2-14
Oh
season. I
yeah.
watched every single game. I was a huge fan, and now I honestly truly believe that my life is better not being an NFL fan.
Yeah.
So in
I
that way, I'm kinda grateful to them, for telling me to fuck off. So,
I'm
it does
pretty
kinda
sure
work out.
I'm pretty sure I watched every single Mark Bulger start.
Yeah.
Didn't miss a
Yeah.
game.
He had some crazy record of like the fastest in NFL history to some amount of completions or something like that.
Yeah.
It looked like he was gonna be the real deal, and then he was fine.
Yeah.
He was fine.
It's hard.
Anyway, fuck the NFL and the Chiefs and all of them. What I used to say is I want the Patriots to win the Super Bowl 20 times in a row, and so that the league just shuts down. And that's kind of still how I feel. So go Patriots, I guess.
Well,
Um,
no, I think the Chiefs are the new Patriots, right?
yeah, but I want it like I want it to be the Patriots for some reason.
Oh,
That
okay. All right.
they were the evil team, so I want them to I want them to cheat and barely check their way to the top. I don't think he's with them
Yep.
anymore, but
Well, and I know we want to So I'm going to round this back into a baseball conversation. Something, you see all these people complaining about how the refs bend the rules
Uh-huh.
or make it work in favor of the Chiefs. And I don't know enough about the rules anymore about how the game is being played right now to weigh in on that. But it did make me think about how that, like, while baseball, there can be some of that. It's very minute. It's like very difficult for the umps to really impact the result of the game. And I know there are some strike calls and stuff like that, but there are 300 pitches
Yeah.
a game, and like they're not impacting all of those, and it's more of a waxing and waning thing, and players get used to it. But I was just thinking about how another reason baseball is good is I think that out of all of the major sports, refs or umps or whatever have the smallest impact on the game, or at least the winner and loser.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Now Angel
probably
Hernandez can make an argument against that, I guess, but
for
for the most
sure.
part.
And I've been a pretty big proponent of robot umps, and obviously that's the direction that it's going in some capacity or another, which should hopefully remove even that degree of margin that you're talking about. But I mean, you're right, especially comparing it to something like football. I mean, there is probably no bigger impact on in sports than like a 70-yard pass interference call or something like that
Right.
that just completely swings the game
Or the
more.
way in which they decide to call holding, which it was always a mystery to me when I was watching.
Yeah.
It all seems like a
Yeah,
joke.
well, it is. I mean, it is. Most sports, the calling is more subjective than baseball. Even though there's certainly the strike zone is
Right.
is a deeply subjective thing. There is like an intent around it. But yeah, like holding all the. I mean, basketball suffers from this as well. Hockey suffers from it as well. These like high speed events that you have one guy just kind of like, I think I saw a thing.
I sure am looking at that guy's tootsies.
How many guys are there on the field right now? That's always my favorite one. Whenever there's a penalty of too many guys on the field,
You got to count.
you got too many guys out there. You'd think that that would be one rule that would never be broken, just how many guys you can have out there. But I don't know. They got a lot of guys and they're all milling about on the side. I guess you just want to get in the game sometimes.
I'd say maybe the biggest issue with football, too many guys.
Too many guys. Just,
Give me like
I mean,
3 less guys.
yeah. That is just a global problem, my friend. Too many guys.
God, I know. You look around, there's just dudes.
They're just everywhere. I'm looking at one right now, pissing me off.
Up to my elbows, brother. I get it. I'm looking at you looking at me. How do you think I feel?
You see me seeing you seeing me? Yikes. All right, let's talk about spring training.
All right.
Okay, the good sport's almost back. The good one, the only good one's almost back. And let's talk through some of the position battles that we have going into spring. How do you want to start this?
Yeah, I think we'll start with I think what is the biggest question mark, at least from my standpoint, coming into spring training, and that is who is going to be playing center field for the St. Louis Cardinals. Before I go down that pathway, I want to complain for just one moment and say that for a team that is quote unquote in flux and development year and retooling and refreshing and so on and so forth, shockingly few battles on this team. But
Yeah.
that's the way it goes. But center field, I think, is the biggest question mark. Victor Scott, too, is obviously the up and coming prospect. Center field could be his job, I think, very quickly. The incumbent, which is our dear friend Michael Ciani, who had an offensive year, last year. We can absolutely say that.
Mhm.
And then I think that you and I should consider, at least for this conversation, the fact that Lars Nootbaar might be a legitimate candidate. I think that is maybe um, the biggest wrench thrown into the conversation of Nolan Arenado sticking around the team is that it kind of pushes Lars Nootbaar into an awkward position. And I guess I'll go down my line of thought there. If Nolan Arenado is going to be starting every day at third base, which if he's on the team, he's going to play 150
Yep.
games. That's how it is.
Yeah.
then it calls into question, where does Nolan Gorman and Thomas Sajasi play? Those guys are going to have to get at bats because this is the youth movement. We need to give either Gorman a chance or Sajasi a chance, or find at bats for both of them, which then forces Brendan Donovan into the outfield. Obviously, he played left field last year. The Cardinals like how he did that. Lars
Yeah.
Nootbaar has to start. So Lars Nootbaar either takes over Jordan Walker's job, which seems highly unlikely, or he moves to center field. So it really complicates how this team is going to be laid out, which is why I think the most interesting position going into spring training is going to be that Cardinals starting center field job.
Yeah. And you can certainly see why, just from a player exposure standpoint, nothing to do with money, why the Cardinals are desperately trying to trade Nolan Arenado, because that immediately jams up the works when everyone you're trying to get at bats for is basically a third baseman, can kind of play second, or can be shoved into the outfield if needed. And so you're really limiting everything to those few positions, because you've also moved Wilson Contreras to first base. Now you do have the DH, but we know the Cardinals like to rotate around there, but you could see maybe Gorman, if this is the case and Arenado is the everyday third baseman. We know we have some good defensive second baseman in the pipeline, whether
Yeah.
it's Donovan himself or Sajasi or a Weatherholt or whatever it might be. I think that maybe the DH spot for Gorman starts to make a lot of sense, and you start to see him being there virtually every day, maybe giving a day off to Arenado or playing second, and so that opens that, or that's where he goes. But you're
Yeah.
still, what does Sajasi do? Um,
And I think, Burleson, I think it's highly unlikely Burley gets a lot of starts in the outfield next year.
yeah.
I think he's going to be DHing a decent amount, especially
Well,
against
that's
right-handed hitters
if
or
Arenado
pitchers.
is out.
Yeah.
Burleson as the DH makes the most sense out of everybody, because
Yeah.
Gorman can play these infield positions,
Right.
right? Burleson, we're not super confident about anywhere um, outside of DH, and but he of all people seems to deserve, if that even is a reality, major league at bats of all of these guys. He just was a pretty consistent bat for a full year, and you can see where his room to grow is, and you can see Burleson becoming a very valuable offensive player, more so than he already was, if he could increase his walk rate and find a little bit more, even more power. You see him being a very valuable offensive player. So you certainly like all, not to belabor a point, but you certainly do get to understand why the Cardinals like really do want to trade Arenado, and we don't need to be mad about it from a fan base standpoint as a salary dump thing, because it also is kind of a, well, we might have guys that could outperform him with given the development time, at least offensively, so it makes sense to play them this year over him.
Right.
But yeah, this is the same logjam that the Cardinals have been in for years, though. All these guys that you know, probably will put up 2 WAR, but some of them could do 4 or 5, and some of them could do 0, and we just don't have
Yeah.
enough space for them.
So then it brings you back to like I said, the competition is Victor Scott 2 versus Ciani versus Nootbaar. And if Arenado is not traded, I think that there's a real chance that it's just Nootbaar by default, because you're,
Yeah.
like I said, there's just no other path forward. And then, there's the problem of, is Victor Scott riding the bench? Is he going back down to AAA? Is Ciani the one that's moved back down? I think with, you talked about this last week, your experience at winter warm up, and it seemed like everybody, and Ali Marmal included, was talking about Ciani as though he was a foregone conclusion. And I think they like his defense and everything like that. Um, so is Victor Scott the odd man out?
I think it's probably one of those things where Victor Scott is either the starter or is in the minors.
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised if he goes in as a 4th or 5th outfielder type. I do think he is probably in that point in his career still where just daily at bats are more valuable than just pure big league exposure on a you know, semi regular basis. I think it's probably I think a useful way to look at this is to start with who is playing for sure every day and
Yeah.
then go down from there, right? And I think you're right that Newt Bar is on that list. There, you've said it enough about his upside and his underlying metrics, and I think the Cardinals agree. As long as he's healthy, he is in the lineup, and so like I think it's probably as we stand right now. My guess would be it'll be Newt Bar starting in center field on opening day with Ciani as the fourth outfielder and Victor Scott in the minors. If the Cardinals trade Arenado, then I think you see Victor Scott as the starter and Ciani as the fourth outfielder. Um, so ultimately, I'm saying probably not Ciani, even
Yeah.
though I don't know. I mean, you could certainly see why they would go with him as they did almost all of last year, but I feel like all the momentum and everything is towards Victor Scott right now.
I think he has the higher ceiling, right?
Yeah,
And he is aware that we exist, and Michael Ciani's never acknowledged us. So
that's a great
obviously,
point.
I'm going for
Uh-huh.
VS2 all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's all. I think everything or everything you said there makes sense. Then it begs the question, like, is Lars Nootbaar ready to be a center fielder if it does play out that way? Do you think he's going to be any good at being a center fielder? Do you think he can stay healthy? Is it there's less walls to careen into, but it's
You gotta cover a
arguably a
lot
more
more.
demanding position.
Yeah, a lot more ground, probably more diving around too from center field.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, well, I think that's one of those things where you are sacrificing. New bar is an obvious when you're comparing it to Victor Scott and Michael Ciani. You are obviously prioritizing offense over defense in that
Right.
moment, right? You're going from those two are maybe the two best defensive outfielders in baseball. There's certainly arguments there, but like they are both elite level defensive players, and then Newbar is not. But we all believe in Newbar's bat, and that's really what you're trying to develop right now, right?
Right.
Like the Cardinals are certainly going to be prioritizing when given the opportunity, offensive output and projections over defense. I mean, it's the same reason why Jordan Walker is penciled in as the right fielder without really any question, right?
Yeah, right? That's definitely how it's gonna play out, right?
Well,
Right? Yeah,
it's
definitely.
what they're
It'd be
saying.
insane for it not to.
That's what they're saying. I mean, they're saying Walker and Gorman, they keep those two specifically have been tagged multiple times now saying virtually regardless of outcome, they're getting 650 plate
And
appearances.
I know this isn't gonna happen this year, but what if Walker and Gorman combined for like 80 home runs this year? I know it's
Well,
not, but what if
yeah,
it
well,
does?
we that's where we this is about to be spring, baby. We get to be
Yeah.
optimistic and hope for these sorts of things. I still am a believer. Kyle has said the same. Like I personally believe the power projections for Walker have been a little unfair towards Walker from an expectation setting standpoint. He is a monster human, but it still generally takes a while for power to develop at the major league level. And so I'm really not
Well,
anticipating 30 plus from him in the next year or two, let alone what would need to be probably 40 for that to happen.
I agree with you and Kyle, but there's also when you see the high one teens exit velocities
Oh,
off the
sure.
bat, like it's there and
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
it
Oh, it's absolutely there,
it's easy to have your mouth, water at those kinds of things. But yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with you. It's hard to hit dongs in the big leagues.
Yeah. One, he's focusing on, he said it, multiple people said it during the recent player interviews that he is focusing on hitting line drives. And, good plate approach like that line drive approach for a guy that big and that strong should result in more home runs. But
Yeah.
he's mostly just trying to raise his launch angle to stop crushing crushing the ball straight down, which he's been doing, hitting it like
Yeah.
113 miles per hour, like,
Well,
one hopper at the third baseman, killing a
it's
guy.
the Yandy Diaz with the Rays problem.
Yeah.
He's built like a house. He has crazy exit velocities, but his launch angle is low. And then you see, and you look at his career. Any year that he gets the ball lifted, even a degree or two over his career norms, he becomes an all-star.
Yeah.
And I think even if Walker doesn't fully ascend, hitting the ball hard consistently is something that will keep you in the big leagues, and he'll impact the team somehow.
Well, and the difference with Walker too is that he is fast as hell, right? So
He's
he
crazy.
yeah, I mean, he's a mutant, right? Like he shouldn't be able to do what he does at his size. So even hitting the ball into the ground, he should be able to maintain a higher batting average because he's so fast. But he's got to be able to make more contact and drive the ball in the gaps more, which is clearly the focus.
Hell yeah, brother.
Yeah,
Next competition I want to talk about was catcher.
yeah,
And that is, pretty obvious unless somebody has a outstanding performance in spring and leapfrogs. I don't think anything like that is likely. Um, but we go back to the conversation of Ivan Herrera versus Pedro Pajes. And, I think right now, most people are predicting Ivan Herrera is going to take the majority of the starts in the big
yeah.
leagues. I think it's inarguable that he has the higher ceiling, but is his throwing issues and the perceived behind the plate issues going to outweigh, um, I guess, what Pedro is bringing to the table? And that's where, the perception is his defense is better. And I think that can be argued, but that's where we're at right now. Who do you think runs away with it in spring training?
Yeah, it's hard to pick anything other than Ivan right now. Every signal is pointing towards him getting the significant bulk of starts back there. He was every pitcher was asked about at was at winter warm up. Everybody asked every pitcher about how they're feeling about throwing to Ivan, and everyone had very nice things to say. He certainly seems to be set up as the primary catcher for the Cardinals. I suspect that all of these battles here are going to depend to some degree about how the Cardinals fare in the standings because they are presenting this as like, hey guys, there's still a chance we do it in 2025, right? And keeping Gray, keeping Helsley, keeping Fetty, all of this, if the Cardinals are actually competing, whether we believe in it or not, if they're actually competing, I think you're going to start to see the hook on these guys a little bit more. It's
Yeah.
like why Gorman being sent down to AAA last year, Pages coming in over Herrera so much. It's because the Cardinals were desperately trying to win every game that was in front of them, and you can see why they would prioritize defense from the catcher position and a guy who can jack a dong here and there over the like clearly more higher end player in Ivan. I'm hopeful that they do what they said they're going to do and make decisions and stick with it this year and not bounce these guys back and forth, but depending on the record and the desire to win. But I do think that's going to play a role
Yeah.
here. But I'd be very surprised, barring injury, of course, which should just be said for all of this, right? Uh, Ivan's going to start 120 to 135 games, would be my guess, with Pages taking the rest. And I don't know, maybe Wilson suits up for one of them, or we do
Yeah.
see a Crooks call up later on, and Crooks spells Pages or Ivan or something like that.
Yeah. Crook spells. Yeah. I think Ivan is going to have a really nice spring, and I think he could be a little bit of a breakout candidate in MLB at large this year. I think
Yeah.
he's going to have a nice year, and we're going to have a lot of fun with that. Luken Baker, obviously my best friend in the world, somebody who I cannot talk about enough. Cardinals have been reported to be looking for a right-handed bat. Is he the bat? Is the call coming from inside the house, Nate? Are they going to allow this guy to make the big league roster? Or do they just hate him?
I feel like we have talked about Luken Baker more than the Cardinals have even recognized that he exists on their team.
This
You know
is
what I
the
mean?
problem.
Yeah. Well, this part of the problem here is where does he play outside of DH? And if DH is clogged up already with Gorman, how do you get Luken Baker into the game? Um, there were rumors earlier this offseason. I don't think we ever even talked about it on the show about him exploring options in some of the Asian leagues, which would be fun because he could go and probably hit 800 home runs in the NPB or
Might be good
something.
for his career, honestly. Get out of the Cardinal system. That obviously hasn't done him any favors.
Yeah. But I mean, he's 27. He hits the shit out of the ball. He got a little taste of big leagues last year. When he does connect, he hits the shit out of the ball. That carried
Mhm.
over to the major league level. But they certainly don't seem to have any real interest in
I know.
giving this
I'm ju
guy a daily shot.
I'm surprised that, like, the Nationals or the Pirates or the Mariners or some other teams that have, like, well, positions at bats to give up and need
Yeah.
some thump and don't really have an entrenched first baseman aren't calling about this guy, and maybe they are, and the Cardinals aren't giving him up, which makes even less sense. Like, where they are just really standing on the fence on this guy. And I think, I said this last year. I'll try to keep myself in line and not talk about it too much. But the exit velocity numbers and the things that he's doing, I think that he deserves a big league chance. And if it's not going to be with the Cardinals, it should be somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because at this point, I just want to see what the guy can do.
There's clearly a belief that it's not going to fully translate and that he's going to strike out too much and not make consistent enough contact to make those exit velocity numbers work.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, there's no reason why they wouldn't have given him the shot already. He was called up last year. There's plenty of capacity to give him at bats, and they still didn't. And to be fair, like when he hit the ball, it looked great, but he also didn't hit the ball most of the time,
But
right?
he was
And
walking at an extreme clip last year
yeah,
also. I just find
yeah,
it
but those the
insane.
that
Adam
that
Dunn had, like, a very long major league career.
that profile is not as popular anymore, and it is a razor's edge of value, right? I'm gonna hit 200, but I'm gonna
Yeah.
have a 330, 350 OBP and hit 35 home runs. It has to execute exactly that, or you're remember Rugned Odor back to
Yeah.
back seasons with a negative F4 and 30 home runs.
I
Like
but Kyle Schwarber is a highly paid big leaguer.
Kyle Schwarber is, but he hits more like, I mean, he just hit what, like 250 last year. Like, I don't think anyone saw that coming, but that at least was in there. And now 250 with 40 home runs is very, very different
Yeah.
than 200, with 30 home
I'm
runs or
just
something like
saying,
that.
give the big guy he needs a chance. He
Yeah.
should go to a losing team. The Pirates should give him the first base job, and I wanna see him play 150 games in the big leagues, see what happens.
I totally agree. I'm just, playing devil's advocate here. And I think, like the Nationals who just traded for Nate Lau. I mean, S tier name, don't get me wrong, but like I don't know what you're doing adding him to a rebuilding team, like going and getting we know what he is, and there's not like a lot of upside left in that.
I
Uh
think the Nationals think that they're gonna be a lot better than a lot of other people think they're gonna be this year with their young players kinda coming of age and, specifically Wooden and Cruz. I think
yeah.
they might shock the world, the baseball world this year.
Whoa. I mean, there are CJ Abrams also. I know he had that
Yeah.
like really bizarre ending to the season and
He was
whatnot, but
caught gambling at 4 a.m. the night before a game, right? Wasn't it? And then they just
yeah,
benched him.
he was demoted. They sent him down to AAA.
Yeah, not a great look, CJ.
Not a great look.
All right, the last spring battle. There are other ones, but the last one I think is relevant to talk about today is the fifth starter, and I'm kind of tagging this as Matthew Liberatore versus Steven Matz. Who's going to be that fifth starter? And I think the other person is going to be probably a high leverage reliever, just
Yeah.
because of the previous performance. I already talked about what Matthew Liberatore's stuff looked like last year and how he could take a step forward. I think we all know Steven Matz pretty well. If you had to bet right now, who do you think is taking that fifth starter spot?
Yeah. Well, I think there's layers to this from a strategic standpoint because obviously I would prefer it to be Liberator because I'm not ready to give up
He's
on him.
25 years old.
I know. I don't think they give up. You talked about his stuff plus last week and some of the elite output that he has capable of, that he is capable of. But hear me out. This is Matz's last year on his contract. We know that when he's healthy, he is elite, right? Or he's very, very good when he's healthy. And the problem
He's
is
the
always
guy's got stuff for all his failings. He has
yeah,
stuff.
he's good when he is healthy. And if so, I would say what I would like to see if he's healthy and he has a good spring, let's let him start because that is the most value you could have for a trade deadline.
Sure.
If Mats is healthy and effective for April, May, and June, then you now have right in your hands a very valuable trade piece. Now, that does potentially stymie like some development of Liberator, but there are a few things more valuable at the trade deadline
Yeah.
than a very effective starter, and it might be worth the gamble. So I'd be okay if Mats does get that spot. I
Yeah.
would
And
argue let's do 6 man. You
yeah.
know, like what do we? Why not? Right? We don't want any of these guys getting hurt.
Well, we talked. I think 6 man makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. You
Yeah,
get Sonny is kind of takes keep him as healthy as possible. You get fewer starts from Miles Michaelis, which is just great. You keep Eric Fetty, a trade candidate, healthy as well. And yeah, there's when Blake Snell and Tyler Glass now and Dustin May and Sasaki and Yamamoto all get hurt, you can swing a trade with the Dodgers and go get some prospects and at the halfway point and
yeah.
improve your team for next year.
Yeah, did you total sidebar, but did you see Sasaki said that he was recommended Tommy John 4 years ago, and he
Oh, yeah, I think we talked about this.
not the Tommy John side of it,
Oh, okay.
at least this piece that he
Yeah.
was recommended Tommy John, this I just saw. And he declined it, and he said part of the reason why he came over to MLB sooner than most and cost himself potentially hundreds of millions of dollars is because he's like, I don't know how long I'm going to be able to do this, so I want to get over to the highest level of competition as early as possible.
Yeah, that sounds like he's gonna die.
I know, right?
People come
Very
back from Tommy John pretty
People come back,
regularly
yeah,
nowadays.
most of the time. In fact,
Huh.
sometimes better. But I mean, you could see he throws so hard. He might be just a little worried that his arm is going to shatter. And yeah,
I don't understand why people like him and Jacob deGrom can't just subtract, like, 2 miles per hour or 3 like, can't you just dial it back slightly? I understand the heat of the competition and everything like that, but if it's you dial it back or your arm explodes, why are you not making this decision?
yeah. I mean, if it were that clear, also, I think it would be more obvious. But is there really going to be a long term gains benefit from a health standpoint of throwing, in his case, 101 instead of 103 or 98 or 99 instead of 103? I don't know.
Gibson did it, Nate. He pitched
Well,
forever.
that's a good point. That's a good point. As Ben aggressively applies some sort of cream to his lips right now.
It's bird bees. It's very dry out here. Don't judge me. I want to keep my lips kissable.
Pitchers and catchers are about to report. You've got
All right. So we're going to talk a little bit more about spring training now that we're out with the battles, just some topics and some players, players to watch this spring. So we kind of talked about this, but maybe to put a finer point on it, does Gorman get reps at third base? How do the Cardinals handle Gorman's spring training if Arenado is still here? Which, as we've alluded to a few times, it seems very likely that he is just going to be the third baseman going forward.
yeah. Yeah, I think that they still move forward with preparing him as a third baseman because I suspect that even if they don't get it done before spring or before the season starts, like the Cardinals are going to be constantly calling, the Mets and the Yankees and the Dodgers are like, looks like your third base defense could use a little improvement, doesn't it? So I figured that they want to keep him ready. But if we go into the regular season with Arenado, I think Arenado's getting the full starters workload, and we may
Yeah.
see a game or two with Gorman over there. Maybe you slide Arenado over to DH to get a day of rest and whatnot, and increase the reps for Gorman. But if you've got Arenado, you're playing him every day. Partly also just to continue to showcase he's healthy and his
Yeah.
value and what. And if he starts to have a real bounce back too offensively, then maybe that makes that trade potential a little easier as well.
I'm convinced that Arenado's trade is happening after Alex Bregman signs, and it is crazy that we're sitting here at the end of January and the top 5, 6, 7 free agent has still not signed.
Yeah, and Pete Alonso, who is not as valuable as Bregman, but still is quite a large, both physically and figuratively. He's a big, strong guy, of course,
He is.
and
I cannot believe he is not a Met.
yeah, well, they clearly. I mean, we've talked about this. It's same thing with like Luken Baker. They're just for big, fat, power hitting first baseman, just not as valuable right now.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's a little worried about how he's going to age, and no one wants like a Ryan Howard sort of thing.
Yeah.
You give a big first baseman a ton of money, and then he's 32, and sure he still hits a bunch of ding dongs, but everything else is terrible. So
Yeah. The Rockies should sign him just for my
I
benefit.
agree 100%. I saw Boris was out there saying like Pete Alonso's requests are not unreasonable. He's like trying to get ahead because I think people are starting to think, well, maybe it's Alonso. His expectations are too high or something. And of course, Boris is going to say whatever the most pro Alonso thing is, but it's
Right.
funny to see him on his heels a little bit saying like, no, it's a pretty reasonable request. Bregman is the one that is particularly surprising to me. I get
Yeah.
why everyone would be cautious about signing Alonso, but Bregman certainly seems like he should be. He should have. It should be a slam dunk for someone to go and pay for him.
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked about his candidacy quite a bit, and I'm shocked. I think he must want more money than everybody thinks he's worth. I feel like Boris is lost a step. Everybody gave him so much credit, but when he was selling or did the deal with Soto, but like I think I could have been the agent for Juan Soto. Like you don't need a lot
Yeah,
to sell a guy like that, a
there's like
generational 26-year-old.
yeah, and there's like two teams basically. So you're just like, how
Mhm.
much will you give? How much will you give? How
Yeah,
much will you give? You know,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So
I
I
think
feel
we
like
could be
he's
MLB agents. I think you're right.
well. I think
No, you
when
said it. I think you're right. I think
I mean,
what are they
if
doing?
you give me the best players in baseball, I think it's pretty easy. I
Yeah,
honestly don't even think those guys need agents. Like Juan Soto doesn't need representation.
no. Well, remember he was asking very important questions.
Like,
Um,
where's the
uh,
bathroom?
where's the bathroom? Do I get a private parking spot, etc.?
Yeah, he was keyed in.
Yeah.
Um, Nathan Church. I'm sure you love that name. But he got a
The
non-roster invite. He is a guy who had a pretty interesting power speed combination in Double A last year. He got invited to the AFL. Um, and that skill set with that bat and that name, this could be a guy
what
that
what more could you ask for?
I think he might have a little bit of a coming out party in spring training this year. I'm not saying he's going to make the club or anything like that, but I think Nathan Church is about to get on Cardinals fans' radar.
Well, Nathan Church, we have submitted for our tax exempt status, and all are welcome.
So stupid.
All are welcome. Come as you are, my boy.
I think churches should be taxed.
But until then, Nathan Church will be
Okay.
here to reap the benefits.
All right.
Yeah, I agree. There's a handful of these guys that like it just doesn't seem like there's any opportunity for them at the major league level, but injuries always happen and these things do tend to play themselves out one way or another. So there's certainly a couple roster spots available, right? For a guy or two to come out in spring and blow everyone away and get that 25th, 26th man spot. Could be Nathan
Speaking
Church.
Yeah, speaking of those kinds of guys, Chase Davis got a non-roster invite this year. Former number one overall pick by the St. Louis Cardinals. He had I think, a shockingly good year last year that a lot of people didn't give him enough credit for. He started at low A, worked his way up to double A, only had a few at bats in double A, but put together a nice year, made some adjustments. He's getting invited to spring training, and I really hope, he'll probably be there for the first half of spring training. And I really hope the Cardinals play him a bunch,
Yeah.
especially as the regulars are kind of getting into shape, and Newt's not going to be out there every single day. Give him some starts, let him see some major league pitching. This is a guy I have a lot of faith in, and I'm just very excited about from his tools standpoint. But excited
Yeah.
to see him kind of like rub elbows with the big league club and everything like that.
He's a big one to watch. He was a first round pick for the Cardinals, came out of the gates, people saying, this is the guy the Cardinals got to steal. And then completely tanks in his debut at pro ball. And to a degree where you're like, oh no, this is
Yeah.
what is it? What's it, Barry, the prospect, he was high end prospect that just completely collapsed. Elijah Green, another one for like the
Quentin
Nationals.
Quentin Berry, is that a guy?
He quit. I forget. I'll look it up in a little bit. But just completely obliterated the perception of him as a future big leaguer, just strikeout problems, like everything. But
Yeah.
last year, he really started to come back around and make those adjustments. And you start to see like, okay, maybe there is something here. This power speed combo. Another dude jacked out of his mind, which we've had a big gap of that since Tyler O'Neill has left. So that'll be good. That'd be fun to have back on the team, just uncomfortably ripped people.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I don't think he really has a shot at major league this year unless something completely clicks. But this is a big year to see if he can bring it back and reascend to a sort of top prospect status.
Yeah. So outside of those players, is there anyone else that you want to call out that you think could be a spring training breakout candidate? Anyone, again, not necessarily meaning that they're going to make the club out of spring, but somebody who you think is going to show up and dominate and press, get a part of the conversation, maybe be on that bust from Memphis to St. Louis this year.
Yeah, so I'm obviously excited to see JJ Weatherhold there.
Yeah.
I've probably talked about him more than most other players in the minor league system because I really do believe he is going to be a fixture of the St. Louis Cardinals in the future. Whether
Yeah.
it's 2025 or 2026, we'll see. But I think we're looking at a future middle infielder, maybe third baseman for the Cardinals for like 5 or 6 years. So I want to see what he looks like at spring training, like you said, amongst the guys getting major league level reps against other
Yeah.
pitchers and whatnot. I think that should be a lot of fun. But I don't really suspect he will break camp. I'm really curious to see what Jose Barrero does. I think there's a real chance, given the fact that he has played at the major league level before, was a former top prospect in his own right. I think there's a real chance that he breaks camp as like as a super utility guy on the major league roster in 2025. It's been a
That,
while since he's done much,
yeah.
but I don't, they went and they got him for a reason. He has some pedigree. He's played. We've seen him before as a member of the Reds. Like to me, he's the type of guy who ends up slotting as the 26th man super utility guy. So I'll be really curious to see how his spring goes because he's going to have to earn it. But I think he is like exactly that profile of that like Jose Fermin kind of guy,
Hmm.
but with a different background.
Yeah, I think that's some fun breakout candidate. He was not on my radar at all, but yeah, that would be a lot of fun. And if the Cardinals can find somebody like that actually develops into something real, maybe this development year is saved. You've brought us back.
Yeah,
I want to pick
yeah,
on.
he does have his career war is negative 2.1
Yeah,
including in 2023 or 2022 he put up a negative 1.3 and then a negative zero point 0.5 and he did not play at the major league level in 2024, so it's a steep hill to climb. But
yeah,
this guy is not coming out of completely nowhere. He was pretty well regarded at one point.
he's got a good launch angle. He is a good defender and like you said, a utility defender. So that makes that's two huge things in his favor. If he can hit a little
Yeah.
bit and impress, that would be a lot of fun. Um, all right, I think that's fun. I want to pick on. I think that Cooper Jerpy
Yeah.
is going to come in. He's healthy. Uh, Everything is going well for him right now. He has kind of been a little lost in the sauce from a prospect standpoint, I think. Um, but angle, his throwing angle. Why can't I think of that? The way that he delivers the ball is super weird.
Like, he's
He's
arm
got some
slot.
His arm slot is super weird. He's got some Chris Sale in him. All of his metrics around his breaking ball and even his fastball look really good. There's players talking about how his 91, 92, 93 mile an hour fastball looks like it's high 90s. And I think he's just different enough, and his whole makeup, the way he goes about it, is different from what most people do. I could see him really jumping, um, being, whether it be a starter or a reliever, however it shakes out. I think he might make a real impact on this spring training. And he's kind of my guy that I'm really, really hyped on. Really curious to see how the Cardinals deploy him in early spring training specifically, and then how long he sticks around if, he does end up finding success.
Yeah. Yeah,
Outside of that, oh, sorry.
he's well, he's certainly, um, he's been a name that's been discussed a lot amongst the Cardinals, and I think I could see, like, a long relief sort of thing too,
Yeah.
where they're keeping him sort of in that middle ground, waiting for the need for another starter, and getting him, bulk innings like that.
Yeah. Two
Yeah.
other guys I want to call out, and these are guys that might even have a big league roster spot. Probably do have a big league roster spot, but very, very curious to see what Zach Thompson
Yeah.
does, what he looks like, what that fastball looks like, what the curveball looks like everything about him. What are we getting with Zach Thompson? And Sajasi. I'm curious to see. He had a ridiculous ascension when he came over.
Uh-huh.
Last year was kind of a mixed bag, but he obviously made the big league club. And just kind of seeing what he is bringing to the table. He's going to be 23 this year.
Yeah.
Still a very young guy. So those are the guys I'm kind of excited to see, though.
Yeah, I know, I just, like, I want to there's so many guys that I just wanna see 650 at bats or 100 plus innings at the major league level and just let them cook, Hambo,
Yeah.
just let them cook. I've got one more name for you, uh, that, we've not discussed yet, and that's Michael McGreevy. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
McGreevy was the Cardinals' first round pick in 2021 and was getting starts at the end of last year. And while it's a very small sample size, he was incredibly effective. Over 23 innings, he had a 2.72 xFIP.
Yeah.
His ERA was 1.96, but that's such a small sample size. But that xFIP pretty much backs it up. And, a lot of that came from he had that like one crazy dominant start right at the end of the season. But when we think about how just teams prefer to act too, when you've got a guy who is thrown out of the rotation and has shown early success and is very young and is a former top pick that they paid a pretty big signing bonus for, like everything aligns for them to give him a real shot. And I'll add on to that by saying that Mo himself said he expects McGreevy to battle for a rotation spot. So you pitched it as Mats and Liberator, but I think McGreevy is right up there as well and has just as much a shot to take that fifth or sixth spot or whatever.
Yeah. I think that's a great call out. That would be a lot of fun. I think like you said, he impressed quite a bit in his little cup of coffee. And if you can get a couple of those young guys to turn into even serviceable big league starters, then this year you start getting really excited about what this year could be and the development that could happen, and moving on from these 35-year-old plus pitchers is just, exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I guess we'll see. So we're gonna get in a couple weeks. Some we're gonna start seeing these guys throw. So I'm
Oh
excited.
yeah, baby.
All right, you need a break.
I have to pee.
Okay.
All right. All right.
All right, well, we're going to talk about some news from around the league and wrap up the episode with a little game. But before we do, we of course want to remind our listeners that this show is listener supported by people just like you out there listening right now, wherever you are, driving, doing the dishes, sitting in a blank room, staring at a white wall, just listening to the show. I know that's how most
Digging a
people,
hole,
yeah, that's how most people engage in podcasts, just sitting in
plotting.
isolation. Uh huh. Uh huh. If you want to support the show, and the time and effort that goes into making it. We'd really appreciate you checking out the Patreon, patreon.com/talking about birds. You get access to our private Discord server, the Birdscord. That's where we're planning the movie night. We got the fantasy baseball league that's going to start up here again. Usually that sort of fantasy baseball and all that starts to pick up after the big game is done. So we'll be restarting the league after that. And so you still have time to get in. And yeah, it's just a really good place to follow the Cardinals and chat with other people that are listeners of the show. And it's a fun little space to get away from the other shitty social networks out there. If you can't join the Discord, the Patreon, understand. We would appreciate if you take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Um, Several of you have recently just whipped it out and just click those little 5 stars. Takes like 30 seconds. You don't have to write anything. We do appreciate it when you do, but even just hitting those little stars helps us out. It really does. Helps us show up in searches and whatnot as people start to look for content here in the as the new season begins. And of course, tell your friends, tell your family. We appreciate it. Hambone, we got a lot going online too. Where can people follow us there?
Yeah. First off, I want to say 5 stars only when you're doing that review process. And thank you, but 5 stars only. We're on Blue Sky. You can come and check us out over there as baseball people slowly migrate to Blue Sky. We are on Instagram at Talking About Birds. We have a TikTok. TikTok is back and we're loving it, people. Come and look at our faces over there. You can listen to this show on Spotify or YouTube if you prefer, and you can follow us and like us and do all that stuff on both of those platforms. Of course, you can check out talkingaboutbirds.com where you can find the podcast, t-shirts, the Patreon, everything. If you need a new baseball t-shirt for the upcoming season and
There
you
you go.
don't want to give money to the Cardinals because they're not fielding a team that you're happy with, come on over to our t-shirt shop.
We
Um,
also might not be fielding a team that you're happy with, but hey, our shirts are funny. So
we're honest with it. Also, we're not lying to you. You can email us questions to talkaboutbirds@gmail.com. Um, you can ask Nate, what he's planning to wear to his banana ball game. Um, is he going to rep the Cardinals? Is he going to rep bananas? I don't know. Lots of interesting things. And of course, you can call us and leave a voicemail or send a text message to 848 birds. That's 848-482-4737.
I'm probably gonna wear my life-size gorilla costume and just scare the shit out of the bananas.
That's a good idea.
Uh-huh. They're gonna be like, they're gonna be so nervous looking in the stands
Oh,
there.
they're going to be so nervous,
They'll be
dude.
so nervous.
Do
They're
you think
like,
they're going to have any Cardinals legends come out with them?
well, ooh, I don't know, because it's basically opening weekend, but the Cardinals are not. So it's at maybe a lot of them will probably be in town. That'd be really funny to see some of these old guys out there trying to play with the bananas.
Yeah, I don't know. Get like Izzy out there to throw an inning or something.
Yeah. Or like, yeah, let's do an inning of Ozzy at shortstop.
That would be awesome.
You think he can still do a backflip?
No,
No,
but I think he could still play shortstop better than a lot of people.
probably. All right, let's talk about the league. A little bit of news. The Cardinals
Yeah.
stay stagnant, but other stuff's happening.
Other teams are doing things. Ryan Presley has agreed to waive his 10-5 no trade clause to okay the deal that will send him to the Cubs coming from the Astros. Houston will receive right-handed pitching prospect Juan Bello. In return, the Astros are also sending $5.5 million to the Cubs to cover some of his contract there. So the Cubs get, slightly better. Their bullpen is not very good, probably the worst part of their team. And Ryan Presley is pretty good. So
Yeah.
little
Probably their new
improvement.
closer, right?
You would think so. I mean, he would have been the closer in Houston if it wasn't for Hader, so
Right.
it would make sense.
Yeah. Um, they've not well, the Tucker deal is a big deal. But otherwise the Cubs haven't done any major things this offseason, but they do continue to chip away and improve their team. And I don't know. I'm getting pretty close to feeling like the Cubs are the favorite for the NL Central this year. I know the Brewers just continue to do it, and they've got some hype behind them as well, with guys like Churio and
Yeah.
whatnot. But I don't know. I've liked basically every move the Cubs have made, which is always frustrating. And Kyle Tucker is one of the best players in baseball who they've
I
added. So
I think for the Cubbies, it's going to come down to, can Michael Bush do what he did last year and be a nice above average offensive first baseman? Is PCA a real player or
yeah,
not? Obviously a great defender, but can he actually play, or can he actually hit a little bit? And then
yeah,
Matt Shaw, who is their third base prospect, one of the better prospects in baseball, who everybody's creaming their jeans over right now. Is he going to step up for them, and is he going to make an impact? He's 23 this year, um, and he looks like he could be really good, but
uh,
we'll see.
yeah. He's one. So he's an interesting. He's one of those guys who's like 5'9", 5'10", but absolutely hits the shit out of the ball.
Yeah,
And he's also very fast. So there are some comps out there to a like Mookie Betts type guy,
don't
Jose.
like that.
I know, like obviously that's probably not going to happen overnight. But just these guys that are like tightly packed like that and hit the shit out of the ball and are also very fast, and you can play it pretty good. You can play anywhere, but they've got a spot for him at third base.
Yeah,
So I think we're all going to be pretty annoyed by Matt Shaw for a while.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Got a nice jawline.
that's important.
All right.
I,
So Cubbies
almost
are good.
anytime someone says a nice jawline, I immediately think about Mike Matheny getting hit in the face by a pitch and just walking off and spitting.
It's a real man right there. The Braves have announced that they have signed free agent outfielder Jerkson Profar to a 3-year, $42 million deal.
This dude,
Obviously,
he just keeps sticking around, getting millions, and,
he had a great year last year.
he did. I know. It's like, I feel like we've almost written him off so many times, and then he just keeps picking up spots on teams and putting up good numbers.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how he's used because he's not a great outfielder, but he has positional flexibility. And seemingly he can only hit the ball well when he's on the Padres. Uh, but last year was really a massive breakout year for him.
Yeah,
He hit over 20 home runs. He walked a ton. And his clutch was through the roof. Now that's, obviously a little more wiggly than
yeah.
everything else I said, but he's been in the big leagues for 10 years at this point, Nate. He's a guy.
Yeah, but also there are 4 seasons that he has put up negative F WAR.
Yeah, baseball is really hard.
It really so it was, in 2021, negative point -2, in 2022, 2.4, in 2023, negative 1.6, and then in 2024, 4.3.
Baseball is really, really hard.
Yeah, yeah,
The Guardians announced on Wednesday that they've signed free agent reliever Paul Sewald to a 1-year, $7 million contract with a mutual option for 2026. Um, Probably a great deal. This is kind of one of those guys I thought maybe the Cardinals should look
yeah.
after.
I thought about that too.
But it is what it is, and he'll probably have a really nice year with a team that can develop pitching and probably get the most out of somebody like Sewald.
Yeah. Yeah, this seemed like a good, I mean, they're getting him to compete because
Yeah,
they're in their window, but, like, I totally thought of him too when you were talking about the Cardinals getting a reliever to flip and all that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The Nationals announced the signing of left-hander Shinosuke Aguasara. Did I say that right?
Agasawara?
Agasawara.
Ogasawara?
He is a Japanese starter to a 2-year deal. This guy's a little bit older. Don't really know a ton about him, but the Nationals, I think, making an interesting move here. with a kind of one eye on the future and one eye on right now. But good for them for continuing to improve their team.
Yeah, you never know, these almost feel like, these are dart throws, right? That don't
Right.
cost a lot, and maybe it sticks, and they've got a new starter for a couple years or a good trade piece, or like you said, I do think you're probably right. The Nationals see themselves competing either this year or next year. You can't. It's hard to find a better set core of uh, James Woods, Dylan Cruz, and C.J. Abrams. Like anybody with that three at their core would be pretty psyched.
And don't forget they got Juan Yepes coming off the
Oh
bench
well,
this year.
yeah.
So
Well, of course we say Yapez.
we say Yepes. He might no, well, maybe he will. All right. The two just general baseball news points to talk about. The league reported $12.1 billion in gross revenue last year,
Cool.
the highest in the history of the game. Um, so I don't know
Well,
what to
it's a
say
they're
about
really
that.
struggling out there, Hambone. So you gotta. I think they need to increase ticket prices. Probably.
They
They could
should.
have
They should. I
probably.
think I'd feel better. I think I'd sleep better if that happened.
Yeah.
Final piece of news: MLB The Show 25, the video game that we all kind of complain about but keep buying every year, reveals its cover leads, Nate, multiple.
I'd. Wow.
Paul Skeens, Ellie De La Cruz, and Gunnar Henderson are all three on the cover this year. I like it. I think it's a lot of fun. Three really exciting players from teams that are all kind of mid-markety, whatever.
Yeah.
I love that we're elevating these guys. I love that Paul Skeens, even though he's the most boring human being on earth, is kind of becoming an MLB star.
Yeah.
And then Ellie De La Cruz, obviously, he should be one of the faces of baseball going forward,
Yeah.
and Gunnar Henderson is just a monster. So all
Yeah.
all good, I say.
It's a fun combo. Yeah, if you're a believer in the curse from these sorts of things, you're like, "Oh, no." Yeah, they put, like, 3 of the most exciting players and, young players in baseball. I think Gunner is the oldest at 23 on this
Yeah,
list, maybe?
yeah, I think
Um,
so. Yeah, he's 23,
yeah,
24.
something like that, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Are you gonna play the show? Are you gonna pick this one up?
So I bought 24 and
Yeah,
I thought it was so bad that I think I'm going to take some time off of the show. Now if people play it and everyone's freaking their geek out over it, maybe I'll change my tune, but I don't find it to be good. They don't improve the game enough for me.
yeah,
And the game is clunky. There's a lot of little complaints I have about it. Like the way they do player development is really annoying to me. The
yeah.
road to the show is very annoying to me. Um, so yeah, I have a lot of little complaints. So I don't think I'm going to be giving them my money this year.
Yeah, there was a time in my life where I played the show basically every single day.
Yeah,
But I think the last one I've really put time into is the show 2019. So it's
yeah.
been quite a while since I've really dug in. The games have been on Game Pass for the last few years, which has been nice. So I've like dipped into them. But I don't even have a Game Pass subscription anymore, and they're not doing that this year. So
Wow.
these games are all only on the new platforms, which I think is a good thing. They're only on PS5 and whatnot, and they're not going to have them in any of the subscription services. So you got to buy the game full price. Yeah, I just don't. I mean, I play video games basically every day, but it's for my video game podcast, and
It's for
so
work.
it's
Yeah.
for work. So it's hard for me to play these just like infinite games. And the show
Yeah.
has been kind of clunky, and I really hated the like, oh, now you've got this sponsored glove, so you're
Yeah.
getting +3 to your defense now. It's like I like that in every other game. Like, I like that sort of stuff, the RPG thing, but not in a baseball game.
Well,
It's not emulating real life, but I like it feeling a little bit more like real,
what I
like
don't like about it is that if you're bad at a skill, like if you're a slow player, you can't improve because you have to like steal bases to get better, but you can't steal bases if you're really slow. So you
hmm,
can't really work on things. It doesn't make sense to me the way that players are developed.
yeah.
Um,
Although
Also, the customization of how you can build your new player, I just find the whole thing very frustrating.
I do like that you could seemingly just like continue to improve your fastball to the point where you're like throwing like 107 miles per hour or
Yeah.
whatever, which
Yeah, with
that's fine.
perfect location and movement and
Yeah,
every yeah, yeah,
yeah.
very silly.
Um, Another Paul Skeens related story. Did you see all the stuff about the baseball card and everything?
I did, yes, and Bob Nutting even came out of the woodwork to comment on it.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know all the details about this, about why this one card has been such a buzzy thing, but basically there was a one of one Paul Skeens autographed jersey card that the Pirates came out before it was even found, before anybody opened the pack. They came out and said, "We want to buy it from whoever gets it." And they put together a crazy package. And I wanted to ask you about this, Hamba, and what would you do? Because I don't know if you saw this. Have you seen this? Have you heard about this? The
No.
package that they offered to whoever finds this card included a lot of stuff that you'd expect, autographs, memorabilia, etc., but also 30 years of
Whoa.
season tickets
Whoa.
2 season tickets behind home plate,
Wow.
to the Pirates for 30 years. I don't know pirate ticket costs, but I imagine that the overall value of that is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I would for that
Um,
over that length of time. Yeah,
30
that's
years, 30 years behind home
yeah.
plate season tickets.
Yeah, I'm
So
sorry, I'm just trying to do the quick math on this. Let's see. Times 500
I
times
can't tell if this
30.
is a bit or if you're
Yeah.
actually trying to.
So depending on how expensive those tickets are, if they're directly behind home plate and everything like that, I just quick napkin math, that's $1.2 million worth of tickets.
Yeah. So
And you imagine in
huge.
15 years, those tickets are going to be even more expensive. So this might even be on the light side.
Yeah.
Um, that's
So
insane.
out of the gates, this card is being valued at, millions, right?
Yeah.
And some 11-year-old boy in LA, I believe, is the one who pulled the card. And
Yeah.
you know,
Do you move
like
to Pittsburgh?
well, no, what you do is you do what this family is. I'm assuming the family is more, it's not like all the way up to this 11-year-old kid. I'm assuming the parents are deeply involved in this decision making, if not ultimately being the decision makers. They're putting it on the market, because it is expected to go for 7 figures, in and of itself.
Yeah.
So that's what they're doing. I think if you like, so Hambo, imagine there was like let's say it was, there's not really an equivalent, but let's imagine like there was Jordan Walker just came up and won the MVP as a rookie, and you pulled his one of one card, and the Cardinals are offering you um, this package, or you can just sell it for like $2 million.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Well, I mean, if I lived in St. Louis, I think I would take the Cardinals package. But since I don't, I'd probably take the cash.
Yeah,
I think,
yeah,
I
I
mean,
probably.
I could take the cash, buy a little house in St. Louis, go to a bunch of Cardinals games.
Well, that's where I start to land, because that season ticket behind home plate, awesome. Like, there's really nothing more the team could offer you than that. That's like
Right.
the best thing you can get from a baseball
Yeah.
team, right? Um, but also millions of dollars mean you can just buy those seats when you want to go to the game. And I don't, I mean, I know I was thinking like, what's the math of like you take it and then you could sell those seats just on
Right.
StubHub every night or whatever, and probably make a ton of the money back also. But I probably even living here in St. Louis, I think I probably sell it and then just you know buy a bunch of that shit and also have uh excess millions of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah,
But
I
I
think
do. I mean, I
that's
think it's a
smart.
pretty good offer from the Pirates. It's not one of
Oh,
those
hell yeah.
bullshit things like, oh, you caught Aaron Judge's 70th home run. Here's a bat.
Yeah. Yeah. This is, yeah, a $1 million plus type of offering. Yeah. I would consider it for sure.
For
But I
sure.
think
Yeah.
take
And there's
cash.
part of me that would, like as a Cardinal fan, and the Cardinals want it, I am willing to give them to some degree a hometown discount, but you know, I also would just like
Yeah.
a couple.
If you're like, oh, yeah, that sounds good. And then somebody offers you 4 million bucks.
Yeah. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
I'll take that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all the news, right?
That's it.
All right. It's been almost a half a year since we played this. I do believe that you hate this game, but I always think it's interesting. We're talking
Right.
a lot about money in baseball right now. and can the Dodgers sustain a $500 million salary every year and whatnot? So it got me thinking again about the progression
Oh God.
of salaries in MLB, and so we're returning to you income, you lose some. All right, so I have a famous St. Louis Cardinal here, and I have their total earnings. So this is not just with the Cardinals, but across all of MLB. I'm going to say their name, and you have to guess how much they made total from their contracts in baseball.
I'm just
This is hard.
I'm
just
just so
pulling it,
bad at this.
just pulling a number out of thin air is hard.
I have C70 just like on my shoulder, mocking me as
Uh
I'm
huh.
thinking here. It's I hate it.
Is that how your day to day is too? You're
Kind
just
of,
like
yeah,
washing the
yeah.
dishes, and he's just like gently telling you you're doing a shitty job.
Ugh.
Okay. So we're going way back for this one, Hambone.
Oh no.
I am going to give you a little bit of a clue as far as the time period goes. But all time Cardinal, one of the best names in baseball, Enos Slaughter. Now you may
Yeah.
remember that he missed a few years because of World War II.
Yep.
It gives you a little bit
The big one.
of context. But he played for a long time. So,
Yeah.
uh, how much do you think he made?
I don't know. Um, I can never remember because, like, was it before World War II? Like, didn't Babe Ruth signed like a $47,000 a year contract or something like that? So it's like it's probably Enos was probably making around that or less than that or slightly above that. So he probably made a few $100,000 at that time, but minus the 3 year or 2 or 3 years he was out for World War II. I've absolutely no idea. I'm gonna say $350,000 career earnings.
Well, this may be the closest you've ever gotten.
Oh
He
yeah?
made $319,000 in his
Hey, that's
career.
not bad. Okay. I
Yeah.
feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, I mean, if it were Price is Right rules, he'd
I
still lose,
know, I know,
but
I know,
but,
I
um
know.
but yeah, 319,000.
Yeah, okay. Okay, let's go. Come on, give me another one.
Okay, now we're going way back more to more modern times. Jim Edmonds.
Jim Edmonds. Somebody whose baseball reference page I've looked at many, many times. I should just know this. I think it's in this ballpark at the very least. I'm gonna say it's $113 million.
You're a little high on this one.
Damn it.
So, he's made
Oh wow.
86.6 million.
Man, money has exploded in baseball. That is crazy. Like a player like him nowadays would be making hundreds of millions
Yeah.
of dollars.
Yeah, I think having, started in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
That's where it's suppressed a little bit. But let's look at Scott Rowland.
Yeah.
How do you think Scott Rowland fared? Hall of Famer, Scott
Hall of
Rowland.
Famer. Um, so he signed a rookie contract, then he signed a decent extension with the Cardinals, and then played for decent money for the Blue Jays and the Reds. Um, so I'm gonna guess it's more than Jimmy Ballgame. Um, but how much more? How much was he making in those final years? Which he probably made the most of the money then, just because of the way baseball was advancing at that point. Um, or salaries were advancing at that point. I'm going to say he was around 130.
You're a little high.
Damn it.
Your guess for Edmonds was almost spot on to this.
Oh man.
Yeah, 117 million.
117. All right. I wasn't that far off on
No,
a
no, you're
percentage
like
basis.
10% high. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, 117. I just think it's interesting that Scott Rowland and Jimmy Edmonds, two people we put at basically the same era, right? And Scott Rowland made you know almost 40 million more, 30 million
Yeah.
more than Edmonds.
Jim Edmonds should be in the Hall of Fame. It's insane to me.
Yeah, I agree completely. Hall of Fame broadcasters as well. Okay. Uh, Chris Carpenter.
Oh God. That one I have absolutely no idea. He had such a weird injury career. Cardinals obviously brought him over for the Blue Jays while being injured, extended him until his death. What did he make?
Chris Carpenter, notably, still alive.
Oh, I have absolutely no idea. I'm gonna say this is probably under. I'm gonna let's say 70 million bucks.
You are under 98.5
Wow.
million.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah. Yeah, he racked up several like 10 to $15 million years
Yeah.
after he kind of came back, you know. Um
God. There is he is, I think, my favorite Cardinals starting pitcher of all time.
yeah, yeah, it's hard. I don't know how I would answer that, but
Man, when he
Carp
was good, it was just so much fun.
well, I know
When he was healthy.
this isn't a new take or anything, but the game 5 2011 against the Philadelphia Phillies is still after game 6 maybe the greatest baseball game I've ever watched, and that was
Yeah.
almost exclusively because of Chris Carpenter.
Mhm.
So I certainly I share that feeling. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say he's my favorite of all time, but you start I don't know. There's not a
He's
lot
up
of
there.
competition, at least in like in our lifetimes,
Right.
when you really get like your favorite play, like I could say Bob Gibson, but it's not the same,
I
right?
never got to
So
watch him though. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I'd probably Wayno,
Yeah.
but it carp is a sort of a different thing. So all right, one last one. This is a historical one for you, Hambone. Kurt Flood.
The inventor of free agency.
Yes. And notably left baseball because of
Yeah.
this whole thing. So, if you're not familiar with Kurt Flood, I highly recommend you look into his background and the impact he's had on baseball. He was traded to the Phillies and said no, and ultimately led to the creation of free agency.
Yeah.
But ended his career.
And I think he still lives in St. Louis, if I
I
remember
do believe
correctly.
so. Yeah.
God, I have absolutely no idea. He didn't play for very long, but he was very good. But players weren't making a ton of money back then. Um, I've not a. I will just throw a number out there to get this over with. I'm going to say $5 million.
Not even close.
Yeah.
He played about 10 years in the league and he made
Damn.
$472,500.
He should somebody should give him money. He deserves more money than that.
Yeah, I don't know what I'd be curious to hear. Like, I mean, he's around, like you said. I'm sure this answer's out there somewhere, but I'm curious, like, what he did, what he's been doing for the last 40 years.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's they have a good union. I'm sure he's taken care of to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, he's like all these guys making hundreds of millions of dollars, nearing billions of dollars. In a lot of ways, you can point it all back to Kurt Flood.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe somebody out there could enlighten us, or I guess we could do some research. But like, if you make your
Okay.
10 years in the big leagues, it's 100 grand you get a year, right? You cap out your
That's the
yearly
pension.
salary,
That's the
your
pension
pension. Yeah.
that
I
everyone.
wonder
Yeah.
if you played 10 years in the 50s and 60s, are you grandfathered into that? Does he get that MLB players union check every year? I wonder. I have no idea how that works.
Yeah, probably easy to find out, but maybe someone let us know.
Well, see you later, guys.
Yeah, I don't know. I could see the union vouching for like, let's backdate this sort of thing.
They
But then
should.
you could also see MLB being like, no, we're not going backwards on any of this. Um,
Well, it'd be the players union. You'd think that they would care about the older guys, but maybe
yeah,
they don't.
yeah. Well, anyway, so you did okay on some of these. I mean, this is very hard, just pulling this number out of nowhere, but you get pretty close on a couple of them. So
I think Flood was the only one I really did
y-
poorly on.
yeah, yeah. So that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thanks everyone again for listening. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com/talking about birds. Next week, we will be back with Dan Zimborski, founder and creator of Zips and all around cool guy. So make sure you check out that episode. And then right after that, we're, I think, a week from spring training starting from pitchers and catchers reporting. Probably start to get news of guys already down there. I know there are already some guys down there getting reps in, but it's happening. We're almost back. So thanks everyone again for listening. And until next week, good old fashioned go Cardinals.
Okay, bye. Do, 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 do.